After such a promising start to this road trip, they lost to Montreal. Really? A lot to be positive, though. Even with the loss, though, right, Johnny? With the kids' performance? They almost had 4 wins on this road trip. Just what I thought could possibly be to carry them for the rest of the season through the second half. How could they do the kid like that? At least they didn't give up with Askarov on the bench down by 2, and they still kept it close. Come on, give me something positive here, man. Why do I keep letting this team get my hopes up throughout this season? Preds lose 4-3 Thursday night to the Montreal Canadiens inside the Bell Center in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. With highly touted goaltending prospect Yaroslav Askarov starting for the Preds, he is the youngest ever goalie to start a game for the Preds at 20 years and 211 days old. He was the Preds' first round pick, if you remember, back in the 2020 NHL draft, to the shock of many, what that would mean with UC Soros in the fold, but we'll get to that near the end of this video moving forward. The Preds couldn't even manage a pity point in either the Toronto or the Montreal game tonight. The loss ends the Preds' 5-game road trip, which started with 3 wins and 2 losses. Not exactly the way you wanted to end the road trip when you started on such a high with the 3 wins to begin it, and you couldn't get at least 1 pity point if you were going to lose both the Toronto and the Montreal game. Slightly over 500 road trip in this point of the season. Not exactly what you want as an output, considering how you put yourself in such a hole to start the season. And now this is game 41. You're halfway through the season with just downhill to go to reach game 82 to see if are you a playoff team, or are you going to be just out of the playoffs team, or if you really tank, are you going to be a draft lottery team still? The NHL trade deadline this year is Friday, March 3rd. That means the Preds have 18 games left to figure out what they're going to be come that Friday. I'm not going to dissect this game goal by both sides, because this again is one of those games where the Preds only decide to show up for a portion of it and take the beginning, in this case tonight, the beginning part off. Yes, I know not many teams are going to be able to come back and get 2 points, much less a pity point, when you put yourselves behind the 8 ball in a game like the Preds did in the first period tonight. Obviously, they were clearly hungover from the hard-fought game against Toronto, where they had no points to show for it either. That Maple Leafs team, who also lost on Thursday, must have taken something out of the Preds like we took out of them since they lost on Thursday. The Preds were almost completely, utterly useless, whatever word you want to come up with, flat in the first. They were outshot 19-8. 19-8 to Montreal, one of the worst teams in the league. Thank God that Askarov did what he did, making 17 saves, because it arguably could have been a lot worse. Preds would fortunately find their feet in the second and third period, being the ones who were out shooting the Habs 14-9 in the second period and 20-7 in the third, but their defense still didn't show up, because even though they tied it very early in the second period, with Forsberg getting another goal, his 9th goal in 9 games, I think. Yep, guess who completed to destroy themselves with their special teams because of taking bad penalties. The Preds took a bad penalty late in the second half of the second period, and the Habs took a 3-2 lead before they took the lead on another penalty in the third period to make it 4-2. The Habs were on point tonight on the special teams. They went 2 for 3. Preds, on the other hand, decided to go 0 for 3 on the power play. Their power play is not getting any better, and I had to think about it. When was the last time they scored a power play goal? Yes, it was when UC Soros stood on his head last week against Carolina. The Preds are 0 for 14 in their previous many power plays. And let me not forget, I appreciate the opening goal where Roman Josi, of course, has to do Roman Josi type things, and the Preds weren't doing anything offensively, so he carries the puck in from the blue line and just throws it at net, and Niederreiter was able to tip it home. Yes, unfortunately, The forwards are not doing enough right now, other than Forsberg and Yossi, to drive this offense. The other high-paid players, I'm looking at you, Ryan Johansson, and to an extent, Matt Duchene, have to do more. But hey, to Matt Duchene's defense, I know he might be a little ruffled up right now since he's not getting the calls in Toronto or tonight in Montreal with stuff that should have been blatant. Edmondson got away with near murder on him, and the refs completely missed it. This is definitely going to be one of those games, though, that come the end of the season, if the Preds miss the playoffs, that I'm going to look back on this one with the rest of you and think, yeah, that's the game where 1 or 2 points might have made the difference in making the playoffs. Miroslav Askarov, who played this game instead of Kevin Lankinen. Remember, I mentioned in the Toronto recap that Askarov was almost Saros' backup for that one because Lankinen missed practice, but Lankinen officially missed this one because he was under the weather. He sounds like he's going to be okay. This was just a good showcase for Askarov, and as I saw in comments on social media, oh, were the Preds showcasing Askarov for a trade? No, they weren't. I guess ye of short memory, unless you're a diehard fan like me, remember back when Pekka Rinne got his first win in the early days against Chicago, and that's the only game he played that year before he would end up being Dan Ellis's backup and then the starter for the next 12 whatever years it was after he became starter. Askarov is going to go back to Milwaukee as long as Lankinen is healthy. They're not going to pay Lankinen $1.5 million to sit down in Milwaukee. Askarov will go back. He'll continue to get games in, game reps. He's playing well. Milwaukee is competitive in their division and the AHL overall. This was just good exposure for Askarov, and I'll probably mention it again closer to the end of the season. Barring injury, Askarov will stay down there, and probably we can project that he will be Saros' backup next season. As for this one, Montreal still holding on to that 4-2 lead. The Preds were out shooting them, like I mentioned, 20-7 in the third period, but at no point was I really scared for Montreal that Preds were going to climb back in this one. Parsonen did chip into it late with Askarov on the bench to make it 4-3, but alas, that's all they could get, and Montreal would win this one to the frustration of many Preds fans by a final of 4-3. Again, to recap, to touch on what I said about showcasing Askarov, they're not going to trade him. They still have to let him play out, maybe raise his trade stock, because as long as Askarov continues to perform well in Milwaukee, he can be projected to be Saros' backup next year. After this year, Saros has 2 years left until he's a UFA. Either the Preds will decide by then with Askarov as his backup next year, and assumingly still as his backup or 1B or whatever 2 seasons from now. That'll give the Preds plenty of time to figure out once Askarov's ELC is about done and Saros is about to become a UFA, which one are they going to keep and which one are they going to trade? If both continue to play well and raise their profiles, they should get a good haul right about the time. Maybe the Preds would be able to open a playoff window, possibly a cup contender, but we'll get to that because we are still a long way off because the Preds still have some young players that they have to develop. But hey, this is about talking about this game. So as for Askarov, 4 goals, 31 saves, not too bad. He made some good saves. He was aggressive. He can work on his mistakes like the turnover that led to the 2-1 goal. But it's good that he is following in the footsteps of his predecessors of Thomas Vokoun, Pekka Rinne, and UC Saros, that he isn't afraid to handle the puck and be that third defenseman that the other team has to watch out for quick breakouts going the other way for scoring chances. Now for the Preds, this 5-game road trip is done. They come home for 3 before a quick 1-game hop to St. Louis before finishing another 3-game homestand before the All-Star break. This may be a make or break time with 6 of the next 7 inside Bridgestone Arena to decide if this team is going to make the playoffs come April. They have Buffalo, a team from the other conference, on Saturday. They have a makeup game that was flooded out back in November against Columbus on Tuesday. And they have a team that is slightly just ahead of them in the standings in Calgary on Monday. 3 games in 4 nights. You want me to realistically think you're still in a playoff spot hunt? You have to win at least 2. If you really want to give me some confidence, win all 3. And of that next 7 games, they want me to feel really comfortable and relaxed going into that All-Star break, that coming back when the heat really turns up, that they're going to make probably a playoff push. They need to win 5 of their next 7, no matter how it's done, overtime, regulation, or the gimmick of the shootout. We'll see how this stretch plays off, and then we'll re-examine it to see if I need to be optimistic moving forward into February or pessimistic and start encouraging the selling of assets again. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. As always, click like if you like this video. Click subscribe if you really like it. You can find my social media by clicking on a channel name. Tell all your friends about Redemption. Despite this loss, and he has a lot of promise to him though, so that's a positive. I am very thankful Yaroslav Askarov is a Nashville Predator rather than playing for another NHL franchise to torment the Preds for the next 15 seasons to come.